We are here at Slee Off-Road today, and we would like to talk to you about wheel spacers. We're very excited about it. Wheel spacers are a touchy subject. I don't recommend bringing wheel spacers at the Thanksgiving dinner table. The problem is this is a wheel spacer. This is also a wheel spacer. This is a piece of aluminum that's made in China and is cast. It doesn't have any type of hub register on it. Additionally, it takes up room on a wheel stud and makes your wheel stud shorter, and you can have some failures with lug nuts coming off. If I drop this on the ground, it's likely to break because it's a piece of junk. This is also a wheel spacer. This wheel spacer is much better quality. Slee Off-Road only works with Spidertrax to produce our wheel spacers. This wheel spacer is made from US sourced aluminum. These wheel studs are also US sourced, and the lug nuts that are included with this are also US sourced. This is a good quality product. We use these all the time. If installed properly, we don't have any issues with them. Let's go through and see what we get in the box. When purchasing wheel spacers from Slee Off-Road and Spidertrax, this is what you get. So inside the box, first thing we have is our instructions. Turns out these are important instructions. These do have the torque specs on them for the Spidertrax wheel spacers being attached to the vehicle. You're going to use the factory torque specs from Toyota when attaching your wheel to the wheel spacers. Next, we have the wheel spacers themselves. There's a nice piece of foam that keeps them isolated for shipping, keeps some damage down. One wheel spacer is going to be, or one pair of wheel spacers is enough for one axle or one end of the vehicle. So you'll need one pair for the front and one pair for the rear. Next, you'll see the Loctite. This is included. This Loctite is used to attach the wheel spacer to the vehicle. So you'll apply the Loctite to the factory vehicle lug nut or wheel stud. Do not apply Loctite to the new wheel spacer from Spidertrax. Additionally, we have the lug nuts. These are the lug nuts that are used to install the wheel spacer onto the vehicle. And lastly, and most important, we got our sticker. There's a couple pieces of this system that's important to understand. One is all the wheel spacers that we sell are going to be either lug-centric or hub-centric. This area here is what's called the hub register. This is the part that centers the factory total wheel onto the hub of the vehicle. It is important that this is transferred on the wheel spacer to carry over to the wheel. That's one of the main design characteristics of the Spidertrax wheel spacers that we sell in the applications that they make sense. What this allows is when the spacer goes on, it doesn't have any movement side to side. The included lug nuts are conical shaped and also will center the wheel spacer onto the vehicle. So you have centering within the hub register and you have centering within the lug nut. This is very important to ensure the wheel spacer is centered on the vehicle. Additionally, this hub register will center the factory wheel onto the wheel spacer. Now, the factory Toyota lug nuts on factory aluminum wheels use a lug nut looks like this. This is a shoulder with a washer. This does not center the factory wheel onto the wheel spacer, which is why, when applicable, it's important to use the proper wheel spacer. If you look at this lug nut and you look at the shoulder on the wheel, the shoulder is nice and square. What happens when you drop this lug nut on here is it actually has some movement side to side. So it does a great job of clamping force, pushing it on, but does require, if we spin this around, does require this hub register to be centered to center the wheel onto the vehicle. Again, looking at the wheel spacer, you see the hub register. It drops on and there is no movement. Therefore, only using the lug nuts to clamp the wheel onto the wheel spacer. We get some questions as to installing the wheel spacer onto the vehicle and what the proper steps are for that. Pretty straightforward on the wheel spacer, goes right on. Not much question on that. When you're using the lug nuts, it's very important to make sure that the tapered side of the lug nut goes towards the vehicle. As silly as it sounds, sometimes that is done improperly and you will not have a proper installation and the wheel spacer can actually come loose. When installing, you want to use the included red Loctite onto the threads of the vehicle itself. You're not going to put any onto the new studs. You'll apply it to all 5 or 6 of the factory studs. Install the wheel spacer, install the included lug nuts. This spacing here is intended for a chrome style socket to easily fit on here. You want to manually or by hand install the lug nuts to make sure that they're seated properly. So you got one here. I'll show another one for you. You can actually start them this way as well. So hand tighten them all, put all 6 or in some cases 5 on. Now in order to torque these properly, if you try to do it as we see here, you run the risk of just turning the rotor. The easy way to do this, which is included in the instructions, is to have a second person help you get in the vehicle. They can apply the foot brake, and that'll keep that from rotating. Another way that we find easy to do it in the shop here is to use a screwdriver. You can apply the screwdriver into one of the vents for the vented rotors, and that will allow one person to do a pretty good job. I recommend resisting putting a pry bar or some kind of pressure onto the wheel studs because you do run the risk of damaging those. So we have found this works pretty good in the shop without any type of damage. The other thing I'd like to talk about, when you initially torque these, you want to obviously use some type of quality torque wrench. The torque specs for the supplied lug nuts is included in your instructions that I mentioned are important. In this particular case, this is a 2023 Tundra. Spidertrax is giving you direction of torquing these to 130 foot-pounds. That is the initial torque. What is recommended is to go back and do what's called a torque check. Now, if you apply your Loctite and you torque them to 130 foot-pounds, you drive a couple hundred miles, you come back and check them again. If you were to check them at 130, you would actually break that tightness or break the lock of the Loctite. So you want to do a torque check, which is torquing them 10 foot-pounds less than the initial torque, and that's just ensuring that nothing has come loose, nothing has moved. So if they torque properly 10 foot-pounds less, that Loctite is all in place, and that's the proper method at checking your wheel spacers after the installation. So should you go back and torque check your lug nuts and find that they move at all, any bit of movement, any additional rotation that's on those, that's indicating that something has fully seated further or there was a problem with the initial installation. If that is found, you're going to actually want to remove the lug nut completely and then apply new Loctite to a clean surface and re-torque it. Torque it to the original torque spec, and then you're going to want to go ahead and torque check that again in another couple hundred miles. It's rare that that's an occurrence, but it does happen. In this case, we have a luxury of working with a brand new vehicle. That is likely not to happen. Some cases you're working on a 10, 20, 30-year-old vehicle. There may be some corrosion on the mating surface on the rotor, may be some corrosion on the mating surface on the hub register, in which case that is a little bit more common. Obviously, the initial install, you want to ensure that that is as clean as it can possibly be, and those are the steps that we take and why it's important to do a torque check after the initial installation. So after you've completed the installation of the wheel spacer, next step is to install your original wheel. The torque specs are included from Spidertrax, as we talked about, to install the wheel spacer to the vehicle. When it comes to installing your wheel, you want to check with your factory Toyota service manual as far as the specifications for torquing your factory wheel. Many cases are going to be different. We've done that on this 2023 Tundra. Something interesting to note, per Toyota, we have aluminum wheels on here. Our factory torque spec is 97 foot-pounds. The torque spec from Spidertrax on their wheel spacers is 130, so you're going to see a difference in there. If you were to have a 2023 Tundra, a 2022 Tundra, you would actually notice that if your vehicle came with a steel wheel from the factory torque spec is actually 154 foot-pounds. So it's very important to look at the differences of what type of wheel do I have and the differences of the recommended torque spec of Spidertrax versus the recommended torque spec of Toyota for your wheel versus your wheel spacer. We would like to thank Spidertrax for working with us on these products. They have built a great product. We've worked with them for many, many years. Our relationship has allowed us to have one of the first available wheel spacers to the market for 2022 and 2023 Tundra, which also carries over in 2023 Sequoia, 2022 and 2023 LX600, as well as the 300 Series Land Cruiser, which we don't have here in the United States. But the relationship has allowed us to get those spacers out, a great quality product, and really offer something a little bit sooner. These are available on our website today, ready to ship. So thank you for joining us, and for more information, please look out to sleoffroad.com or give us a call at our local phone number. Thank you.